Greetings and welcome to the Vortex. I'm your host, Daniel Allen Jones, and I'm very honored to be here with Bobo from Finding Bigfoot.
Daniel.
It's great to have you here. You know, it's always a good time at the Texas Bigfoot Conference, and you've done some incredible work. You've been a part of a production that brings awareness to the subject about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and the possibility that creatures like this are something that not just is in one area, but could be all over the world, which I think is really fascinating. And so when we're talking about this subject of cryptozoology, in your view, why is it important that we consider this field of study?
I think it's just that whole human desire to discover and know what's around you, what your environment is. But as far as, I think there's undiscovered lake serpents, sea serpents, some kind of giant eel type thing that goes in and out, follows the salmon around. And that'd be cool to discover, but discovering the Sasquatch or something bipedal hominid would be a whole nother trip. I mean, because they're almost undoubtedly more closely related to us than a chimp or a gorilla or orangutan.
Right.
And you see the similarities with us with them. I think we can learn from the Squatch, like how to live in your environment without destroying it. I think it's going to be interesting. I can't really predict what we'll learn from because they're such an unknown entity.
Right.
I think when the real focus is put on them, they're still going to be hard to study, but when the weight of the government and all these university research labs and graduate students and real scientists with real equipment are out there consistently, well funded, I think we're going to be surprised at what we learn.
So it might change a lot about how we think about not just our own interactions, but how we interact with the environment and how that affects creatures that are out there, which right now we might not have scientifically acknowledged, but that we at some point could say we've made a new discovery, and if we continue to behave like this, it could mess up things for this new species. And so I think that it's important to be considerate when we're going out into the environment. What do you think that we could learn when we officially say, okay, Bigfoot's out there and there are maybe this many? What are some things that we could learn when we finally say, all right, this does exist, and where might that take us?
That's a good one. It's hard to say, I think it depends how they're presented, If they're like presented as like murderous, savage, giant beasts that are to be feared and shot like we normally do with big, large animals that are predatory.
Let's say we finally say that Bigfoot exists, we acknowledge it scientifically. What are some things that we might find out that can help us understand more about what this creature is? And what are some things that you would say we could look into once we say, all right, this does exist? What are some things that might be good to start researching if we can finally come to a definitive conclusion that Bigfoot is out there and there are maybe low numbers, but there are populations? What are some things that you might find?
Well, they could have some really important resistance to disease if they're close enough genetically to us that we can borrow some of that DNA material I don't know, scientists.
No, that's actually a really interesting thing to consider, because genetically we could actually have a lot in common and be able to utilize that in some way to help
cure cancer,
resistances, or just being able to get over certain diseases, or maybe that they have. That's really interesting. And talking on the topic of cryptozoology, while you've delved so much into Bigfoot and Sasquatch and have had some interesting experiences yourself, what are some other cryptids and other creatures that fascinate you?
Sea serpents, lake serpents. I almost saw one time. I was on a boat where the skipper saw it, but we were shrimping off the Oregon coast in a thick fog bank, and we went through, there's these holes out there, these blue holes, where it's blue sky, we were surrounded 360 by fog. We went through one of those, and I was just working, we were getting pretty dirty toes, so you have to pick out all the junk going on behind the belt before it goes in, processing it. So we're just picking away, and my skipper came back, and he was just white-faced. He's just like, I just saw a damn sea monster.
Oh, wow.
The classic humps and undulating in the water.
Wow.
Not a dinosaur or anything like that. He said it had a 12, 15-foot long neck, head kind of a crossing a horse and an alligator kind of looking thing.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So there could be something out there that we just haven't acknowledged, zoologically or scientifically yet, but maybe enormous creatures that are still under the water or maybe on land.
For sure. Like they just discovered that rare whale species just last year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a small whale, but I don't think that's going to have it. That'll be cool, but it's not going to have the impact of a Sasquatch, like our closest living relative. Is giant wild ape man running around.
Yeah.
That people have been seeing for thousands of years. And what's going to be really interesting, I think he's going to have a field day with this too, is going to be the psychologists and sociologists that look back at the scientific community and the media and how they just poo-pooed it and how arrogant they were about it.
Yeah, it seems like it's something you can get ridiculed for because you saw something you don't understand, and people never end up wanting to tell about it because they think they're losing friends and family. But when you have the support, you find out, people have had exact same sightings and things that say...
hundreds of years.
Right, yeah, and so I think that's really important to look at. Like you said, psychologically, or how our society has kind of played it down for so long, it's just become an icon of pop culture.
Right.
And I think it's important to see, like you're saying, if we really take a scientific approach and finally say, okay, this is real, this is out there, it's going to change how we think about each other and what's out there in the environment.
Well, man will still suck, but...
Right. Well, being that a lot of people tend to think that Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and some of these other creatures are just imaginary or even nonsense, what would you say to people of that mindset?
Well, not imaginary, but I think there's paranormal things that are out there, like Dogman,
Okay, yeah.
I never thought there was anything to that. I thought that was just misidentified Bigfoots. Then that was over 15 years ago now, and I was working with the guys at Mysterious Encounters, old TV show, and when the show went to the Midwest, there was tons of reports of black lions, like these, not black panthers, but like actual lion-sized things, like not melanistic jaguars, but looked like an African lion black, and Dogman.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so it was like, I think the Dogman is just a total paranormal. I don't think you're going to find you're not going to find any fossils of a dog morphing into a man or anything like that. I think that could be like shapeshifters, like multiverse stuff,
Right. There's so many ideas about how some of these creatures might have these paranormal qualities, and like you're saying, can either shapeshift or present themselves in different forms, and I think it's a little bit more on the fringe of an already weird subject, but it's worth considering. If people are out there and they're seeing things, you can't just dismiss it. I think you have to at least consider looking into a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in Dogman, I'll listen to the stories, but I think it's pointless to try to go out and study those things because they're not like a biologically based thing like a Bigfoot, like Bigfoot's here in this three-dimensional world.
Right.
At least most of the time.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you have a new podcast that you and Cliff do, and speaking on things that are just a little bit outside of Bigfoot, you cover a lot. And so you have this podcast, Bigfoot and Beyond. So tell us a little bit about that.
Just like we're talking about here, it's basically the same kind of stuff. Talk about mostly Bigfoot, but we talk about Dogman, Serpents. We haven't talked about Chupacabra yet, or Mothman, really, that kind of stuff.
Well, I got some new episodes to line up for you then now.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing is that, you have the lineup of classic cryptids, and then there are a lot that many people don't know as much about, and you guys are doing a great job of providing the awareness, sharing the information, and really educating people just over the years on what we're dealing with these mystery encounters and what could it mean for where we're going and our understanding of each other and in nature. So, Bobo, it's been a great honor to be able to have you here, and we hope to be able to make new discoveries every day. We've worked together to find out what's next.
Cool. One thing I got a couple witnesses lined up coming up for giant salamanders, like giant 6-foot-long salamanders in the Pacific Northwest. These people say they've seen them.
That's incredible.
I find hard to believe. I used to be a stream cleaner for after you go through and do a clear-cut logging. All the debris that falls down into the creeks, you got to bucket out. So we'd walk miles of creek and bucket everything out, like in remote places. And I never saw anything that indicated that, but people say they see them, so
Yeah.
I'm going to check that out too.
That sounds really interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, we're making these discoveries in a way that, you know, if people don't share about these stories, we might not ever hear about some of these fantastic creatures.
Right.
So you guys are doing an awesome job, so keep up the good work. And I like to think that we won't know if we don't go. And you guys have done just that. You've been all over seeing how these sightings are not isolated. Again, they're all over the world. And it's important for us to acknowledge that and to really see how it's affecting us scientifically and psychologically, like you said as well.
Cool.
So appreciate your time to
Right
come
on,
out here
Daniel.
again. And we'll see you in the Vortex.
Adios.
If you liked this video, be sure to check out our other content and get connected on our page and social media sites. Every day, new discoveries are being made all across the world and beyond, so let's work together to find out what's next. And remember, we won't know if we don't go. I'll see you in the Vortex.